Hi, I'm Barbara Poole. I live in Lowell, Massachusetts. My company's name is Felt. I make felted garments and accessories. I use raw wool, that's the stuff that's yarn made out of, and I use other textiles, mostly silks, to create my garments and accessories, which I sell in the Boston area and around the country. My art career began as photography. I worked at photography for quite a few years, and then I went back to school, and I got my undergrad at that time because I was self-trained as a photographer. I was going to rock concerts and doing that sort of thing, so it was a lot of fun. And then I went to school. I finally went to school, and I went to the Museum School of Fine Arts in Tufts University, got my BFA in jewelry. So I was a jeweler for a number of years. And then I discovered painting, and I went back to school and went and got my degree in, I got a degree, an MSAE, Master's in Art Education at Mass Art and Design. But during that process, I discovered my love of painting, and I started to paint full time. And I was a painter full time up until 2007 when the market crashed. I discovered making scarves. I discovered felt making around 2003. This is the very first scarf I've ever made. I call it the Hillary. I don't know why I called it Hillary, but I just like the name. My kids had given me a kit, and it was the very first time, at Christmas they gave me this kit, it was the very first time I discovered something that was very much like painting in terms of the process, because what you use to make felt is you're using a raw material, using raw wool. This is the stuff that yarn is from. With my own muscles, agitate my own muscles, and very minimal amount of other interventions to create the felt, your hands, water, and soap, and that's all it is you need to create felt, which when you're painting, you need a ground. You take a stick that has dead animal hairs stuck on it, or now synthetic, and you're pushing around pigment on a canvas, and I can create worlds, both in painting, and I also can create worlds in felt. So one door closed, and the next one opened, and since 2007, I've been a full-time maker of felted garments and accessories. When I was in art school, one of the things I learned that art is all about solving problems. That's all it's about, whether you're deciding whether or not I paint, which green do I need to make the leaf the right color, how do I match your skin tone, how do I make the building straight? It's all about solving a problem. So people would come to my booth and they'd tell me they loved my shawls, but they didn't know how to wear a shawl. I thought, well, that's kind of silly. How can I fix this? So hence I created what I call the holy shawl. All the holes are functional. And by that I mean you can take one end. I'm just going to demonstrate it on the table as I throw things on the floor, and pull it through. So you can create many different looks by just pulling it through, and then you're automatically dressed. So when you're talking about balancing, I try to look for both, because I do recognize that not all garments are easily worn, but I want people to want to wear them. So I try to create functionality and beauty at the same time. I think that's really important. The process for me creating something, and this is something I say, I have an assistant, and I say it to my assistant Sam all the time, art begets art. So you're making something, and all of a sudden you're looking at it and you see it a different way, and you see, oh, I know, I'm going to go a different way with the next scarf. So it's more like things feed each other. The holy scarf, it feeds itself. It goes from one thing to another. I would say that's how I actually create. My influences are, I look at more art than I do fashion. And the only fashion designers I actually look at are like Rodin, the sisters, and Alexander McQueen, and Dries Van Noten. I enjoy those people because of their mix of materials. And that's what I enjoy looking at, and that's what I enjoy doing. I make these scarves, which I call Flutters. As you can see, why I call them Flutters, they move around. These actually, it's funny how things happen. They began as a way, because I tried to practice zero waste in my studio. Because fabric is, it's actually, I think it's the third largest, clothing is the third largest landfill. So I do not want to be contributing to that as much as I can. And I use beautiful, beautiful silks. So they became scraps, using up every single piece I had to create these scarves that when you wrap it around your neck, you walk and it flutters and moves, and it's very, very light. I don't consider what I do fashion. I do consider what I make as art. And here's where I draw the line. Here's where I make the distinction, not a line per se, but a distinction. I think of fashion as things that change, completely change all the time. It's about looking trendy. It's like looking now. And I think of art as something that's going to last through the ages. So that said, there is clothing. That is art. I can go into many museums, into the costume institutes, like the Costume Institute in New York City at the Met. It'll totally amaze you, because all art has to have craft. And when you look at some of these amazing gowns and the costumes are the amazing gowns made by such artists as Alexander McQueen, you look at the construction and you can appreciate the level of expertise that went into creating this garment, and it's fantasy. And I frequently get people coming into my booth and they'll say to me, "Oh, that's lovely. Where would I wear it?" And I have to point out to them that they're just clothes. But that said, once again, when we get up in the morning, we decide how we're going to put ourselves out in the world, how we make people see us, and how we want to be perceived. So not all clothes are art, but there are clothes that are art. And I consider what I do timeless. I consider the stuff that I make is not going to be trendy. It's always going to be interesting and to look at. You're not going to be able to say, "Oh, that was 1970 or that was 1950 that was made." And that to me is what's key. I make very, very colorful garments and accessories. I want to bring color into people's lives. I feel like most people live very gray lives and they're terrified of color, and I want to try to bring it into their life because color makes you happy. So I think joy is something that I really work hard at, trying to bring joy into people's lives. And I see it when I'm at a show and somebody tries on one of my garments or accessories. I can tell immediately. I can see it. I can see the transformation happening behind their eyes, their faces. I can see that they're seeing something in that mirror that I'm not seeing. So that's why whenever people buy from me, I never ever say, well, I never try to sell people. I always ask them, what do they think? Because I can't see what they see. So I think it's important to me that I create joy and happiness and just pleasure. So what is the project that I would like to do? If I had unlimited resources, it would be the project that I wanted to do for Lowell, and I call it The Crossing. On Appleton Street, there are two buildings, and there used to be, all the buildings were connected this way with bridges so that the workers could walk from one building to another building without having to go outside on the upper floors. And it's grandfathered, National Historic, so it won't go and come down. So it's this iron, empty ghost of a bridge. So my proposal is and a little bit back to it. And Lowell is also is a huge immigrant population, and always has been. I think it's like over 20 languages are spoken in Lowell High School. You know, it's great. That's crazy. That's wonderful, and it's always been the immigrants are coming in. So my idea was to take images from the Lowell National Historic Society, and I can't remember the fabric. Print them on this fabric. And they would be going one way. And then the other side, I'd have photographs and photographs of present immigrants who live here now. And the question is on the other side, so that you'd see interspersing of both past and present immigrants going across this bridge, this ghost bridge. And down below would be a legend where with your smartphone, you could click on the QRC code and listen to the immigrants' stories, both past, because the Lowell Historic Society has letters. So I would have somebody read the letters, so we would have past people speaking and present people speaking. And the question that I'm looking to answer is why Lowell? Lowell, I feel, pays homage to the artists, but they don't pay artists. They like the fact that we're here, but they don't necessarily support us through. So I'd like to see more. I'd like to see an artist on the city council. That's what I'd like to see, because we're supposed to be one of the largest cities with artists here. There should be an artist on that city council representing our needs, because a lot of times, I mean, our needs aren't just as anybody else's needs, but they are slightly different. I'd also like to see artists put on a lot of the other boards for things like when they're talking about planning of the city planning, things like that. Bring the artists in. So I think I would like to see us used more as the resource we're touted as. My biggest struggle actually is the other part of the thing that's not taught in art school is business, is how to survive as an artist. I think that's the biggest struggle, is how to have a creative life that supports you. If I came out of medical school and didn't become doctors, people would be really upset. People spending all this money and nobody's becoming doctors. I mean, art school, people come out of art school, more than 50% of them will never, ever, ever do art again. Now, some of those will go on to a creative life. They'll become art directors. They'll they'll enter a field that is creative, but some of them will not. And a lot of it, I believe, is they've been discouraged. Because it's my biggest struggle, I have an assistant. I've always had an assistant. They'd started out as an intern, and then I hired them. I feel like the thing I'm most proud of, the biggest thing I'm most proud of, is the fact that I emulate and show these my interns, they're definitely always younger than me, what it takes to create a life that honors your creativity, what it takes, how to survive, how do you do this? So it's this thing I struggle with. I would say that's the hardest challenge, and it still is always a hard challenge. I mean, my business has grown, and now I'm at a point where I've hit a wall where if I want to grow more, I'm going to have to ramp up. But at this point in my life, I'm not sure I want to do that. To learn felting, there's so much. You can go on YouTube. There's plenty of classes on it, but I highly recommend that anybody really wants to learn it, they really should get themselves a tutor, because you can learn how to do it on YouTube. No, you can learn the process. It's not hard. But what you're not going to learn is when it truly is finished. Felting is one of those things like bread making. I can show how many people exactly, the same formula, here, this is how you do it. And all of them will come out with something absolutely different, because it really has to do with your hands and your muscles. I would advise that you have a teacher, at least a tutor. Try the YouTube, try it out, but find a tutor. You've got to somehow or another support yourself. And if you want to support yourself creatively, then you're going to have to market yourself. It's kind of like a no-brainer. It's like nobody's going to discover you by accident. It's not going to happen. You've got to put yourself out there. I mean, in the past, there was a gallery system, and the gallery system was such that if a gallery took you on, they actually supported you. They gave you a monthly stipend. So that you could work. That doesn't happen anymore. That's gone. So it's up to the artist to figure out how they can feed themselves and at the same time make work. Right. Well, you can find more about me on my website, Barbara Poole, bfelt.us. That's where it's also a store. You can shop there. I also sell through a number of places around Boston, Dahlia's, and also online, Artful Home. I sell through Artful Home, where you can find my work.